Hello, dear viewers, you are on the channel Life Cucumber Brick. Good mood to you, and enjoy listening. No, I don't want to, please. The woman who was trying to drag Arya to the car even pushed with her foot. What's the matter with you? I don't get paid to carry crazy people on my back. If you don't go to the car yourself, I'll call a doctor, and they'll give you an injection and take you to the nuthouse. And then you'll be considered a fool for life. Arya stopped lashing out. She was well aware that the forces were unequal, that she would be sent to an orphanage anyway. No one would let a 7-year-old girl live on her own. Arya got into the car in silence, determined that she would not stay in the orphanage for long. The neighbors wondered, "Why are you doing this to a child? Couldn't you do it nicely?" Woman finally could not stand it. She turned around and yelled, "Why are you all playing the virtues here? Can't you see how the girl is brought up? And how can a grandmother of 80 bring her up? That's right, she can't." Somebody said, "You don't have to yell. Not in your office. Where were you before? If you thought Gwyneth was a bad teacher, you're a good one, we'll see. You can't get through to a child." All the pushing and shouting. The woman forcefully slammed the car door behind her, and all the way to the city told the driver what gray, ungrateful lives in the villages. Arya covered her eyes and pretended to sleep. Until a week ago, she was quite a happy person, playing with her grandmother in the city, helping her around the house, in the garden. In the evening they read books, because even though it's summer, but to forget what is learned cannot be. And then one black day it was all over. Grandma made breakfast. They sat down at the table, but Grandma didn't even touch the food. Then she moved to the couch and said, "Arya, run and get the paramedic. I don't feel well. I guess the pressure must have kicked in." Grow frightened looked at her grandmother and ran off at a run to the infirmary. When Arya returned, she immediately realized they were too late. She rushed to her grandmother, began to shake, and tearfully beg, "Granny, Granny, wake up, don't scare me." The paramedic pulled her away from the old woman with difficulty. The neighbors had already run to the screams. Arya stayed with her neighbor for 3 more days after the funeral. She begged Ivy so much to keep her, but Ivy averted her eyes. "Arya, understand me, I don't have 4 of my own." The car rocked and stopped. The driver finally turned to the woman, who had only gone silent. "How are people like you allowed to work? I am also from the countryside, but I would never allow myself to talk about the townspeople in such a way." What a fool. He jumped out of the car, and the attendant Arya hissed, "Whoa, I'll have you fired." Today, she shoved Arya. "Stop pretending. We're here." Arya stepped silently out of the car and saw an old gloomy building in front of her, and she was scared. Someone touched her arm, and the girl turned around. It was the driver. He put something in her hand. "There you go, let you have it. I bought it for my daughter, but I'll buy her another one later." Arya smiled appreciatively. It was a simple chain with a small medallion in the shape of a bear. "Thank you very much. Your daughter is lucky to have such a father." The girl was led away, and Clayton stared at the door behind which she had disappeared for a long time. Then sighed, "I guess I should go pack my things. There's no way that Grump is going to forgive him and run to the bosses to complain. Oh, I'm going to get my ass kicked by Leslie." Leslie was Clayton's wife. They had just recently taken out a mortgage, and now a stable job was very important. Especially their daughter was growing up, and they were planning another child in the future. "Semenov, come in here." Clayton sighed. That's it. After hearing from his boss everything he thought of him, Clayton got his settlement and moved toward the house. He was going over and over this conversation, but he couldn't think of any excuse. But he couldn't keep quiet either when he saw such attitude towards children. The door creaked treacherously, and Leslie looked out into the hallway. "Clayton, what are you doing up so early?" He walked silently into the kitchen, put the money he'd been given at checkout on the table, and sighed. Leslie understood at once. "Tell her." He told her everything. "Leslie, you see, she's to this girl, well, worse than a dog." Leslie looked at him thoughtfully. "Clayton, well, what are we going to do now?" "Leslie, I'll get a new job tomorrow." Wife stood up and kissed him lightly on the nose. "Well, there's nothing to worry about then, and that woman will return everything to her boomerang." "You'll see." "Leslie, aren't you going to swear at me?" The woman looked at him in surprise. "I will, but not for that. But don't forget that I'm a woman with a temper." Finding a job was not so easy. Or rather, there were a lot of jobs, but they didn't pay much. A week went by, and Clayton said at dinner, "Tomorrow, whichever one comes first, that's where I'll stay. I'll change jobs later if something better comes along." He was just talking when the phone rang. It was Edgar, a childhood friend. "Hey, Clayton, how are you?" "How's life, young?" Clayton smiled. Edgar was the kind of man who never got discouraged. "That's okay. How are you?" "And I'm doing fine." "Listen, Clayton, do you have any smart guys in mind?" "What do you need guys for?" "What do you need guys for?" "You know, we got a team here. It's a sweet place, but only guys will do, because there are a lot of shift workers on our routes. They're sometimes violent after long sitting without civilization." "Where do they ride like that?" Clayton honestly didn't understand anything. Edgar laughed. "So you've forgotten where I work?" Clayton slapped his forehead. "Damn sure on the railroad. How well do conductors get paid?" "It's all right. You see, every profession has its nuances. You can make very good money." "Edgar, will you take me?" "You used to work for some government agency, didn't you?" "Yes, I did. I've done all my work. I'll tell you about it later, if you're interested." Clayton, of course, come to you, I'm sure. So I think it's gonna work out. Clayton hung up, looked at his wife. "Well, we didn't have to wait for tomorrow either." Leslie sighed. Leslie sighed. "Leslie, when we were students, we often rode as guides. It is true, not distant flights, but you have to get used to it, especially if they are well paid. On the first trip, we saw him off with the whole family. Even my daughter almost shed a tear." "Daddy, do you remember the story about the girl who had no one left?" "Of course I remember. I'll buy you the necklace I gave her." "No, not the necklace." "What was it about then?" Clayton squatted down in front of his daughter. "We wanted to invite her to visit, so she wouldn't get bored and cry." "Oh, I'm sorry. It completely slipped my mind. We'll be sure to go and invite her as soon as I get back." Leslie whispered in his ear, "Just don't forget that promise. Mandy often thinks of that girl." "Okay, Leslie." "Of course, I won't forget." The flight went well. Edgar taught him some of the tricks of the trade, and Clayton, after listening to him, earned, in addition to his pay for one flight, 2 more. He was pleased. There were indeed a lot of bussers, but no one was drunk. No one was rampaging. So they pulled up a beer, which Clayton had plenty of. It was only a couple of hours to get home. There was another hour to report back, and Clayton was free for a whole week. First to sleep it off, and then they would go to the park as a family. He'll take his girls for a ride on the merry-go-round and feed them ice cream. He even closed his eyes, imagining how great it would be for them. He also missed his daughter's reasoning terribly when she tried to be serious, adult, and the soul of his wife's holy hair. There was a commotion in the wagon. Clayton jumped up at once, just so long as there wasn't an incident at the very end of the trip. He jumped out of his compartment and was taken aback. There was a girl in the carriage. He could hear her asking, "Do you want a daughter?" Clayton froze. One of the men handed her a large chocolate bar and asked, "Pearl, where did you even come from?" She sighed. "I lived with my grandmother. Then she died and they took me to an orphanage, but it's very bad there. Everyone there is mean. The guys told me that when someone needs a child, they come and take it away. But sometimes you can wait a very long time. So I decided not to wait. I ran away and will find my own parents. It can't be that no one wants a daughter." The bearded, big men looked at each other and hid their eyes from the baby. "Arya, is that you?" Clayton took a few steps toward her. The girl perked up, turning to him. "Oh, it's you. I remember you. Look, I'm wearing a necklace. They tried to take it away from me several times, but I did not give it back. Your daughter didn't scold you very much." Clayton smiled through his strength. "No, I told her about you. On the contrary, she was worried that she couldn't meet you and give you toys." Clayton thought about it for a second. "You know what, since you ran away anyway, come to our house. I'll introduce you to both my daughter and my wife." It was an hour before the flight ended. In that hour, Clayton had had time to feed Arya and learn that she had been on the run for a week. And in that hour, almost everyone in the carriage stopped by and brought something. Some sweets, some toys, probably to take home. And there were those who left money. Clayton was indignant at first. "You're crazy. What for?" "Let them. Buy her something to take her and her family to a cafe." He had nothing to do but wave his hand. What's there to argue with? And even the appearance of these people did not dispose them to argue. Arya obediently and quietly sat while he finished his business. "So shall we go?" Arya looked at him seriously. "Want your wife scold you for bringing someone else's child into the house?" Clayton laughed. "I have a good wife. You'll make friends with her for sure." Clayton already understood he and his wife had a big talk ahead of them. He realized that maybe he was wrong and had made up some nonsense. But in any case, they would talk first and then make a decision. Leslie opened the door and threw herself around Clayton's neck. "I missed you so much. It's like you haven't been home in a year." "Me too. Leslie, I'm not alone." He was just about to introduce Arya when Mandy jumped out of the room and rushed toward him screaming. For a moment, Clayton saw Mandy's eyes full of pain. Leslie fidgeted, scrambling. An hour later, Arya, unwashed and changed into Mandy's clothes, was flying around with dinner and talking about her adventures. Mandy looked at Arya with huge eyes. In the evening, when the girls were tucked in, Leslie came into the kitchen, where Clayton was waiting for her. He put his arm around her and wanted to start a conversation, but Leslie put her finger to his lips. "Wait, I want to talk to you." "I understand, Clayton, it's not that easy. But it's not easy for everyone right now. I just can't let this girl go where she's so bad. Can't you and I, can't we warm her soul and our Mandy?" She was so worried about her, she wouldn't back down a step. Clayton looked in amazement. "I don't understand where you're going with this." Leslie looked him in the eye. "Clayton, let's take her away, adopt her, get custody." "I don't know what they usually do." Clayton smiled, kissed his wife soundly. "You know what speech I was thinking about when Arya and I drove home." "Which one?" "The one you just told me." In the morning, Arya was sad. She refused breakfast. Leslie got worried. "What's wrong with you?" "Are you ill?" The girl shook her head. "No, tell me, when are you taking me to the orphanage?" Leslie sat down in front of her, taking her hand. "We do have to take you to the orphanage, but only to start the paperwork." "Documents? What kind of documents?" "You see, we really need another daughter. Would you be willing to be one?" Arya stared at Leslie for a minute, then wrapped her arms around her. "Is this true? Will you really take me? I know how to do dishes and wash floors. Leslie laughed. Very good. Maybe you can teach Mandy something too. 2 months later, Clayton, Leslie, and Mandy were standing at the door of the orphanage. They had to suffer because the very woman who was taking Arya away, as soon as she saw Clayton, immediately declared, "Well, now we'll see which one of us is an idiot." But Leslie went through all the trouble, and I was only allowed to take Arya away, but the woman was removed from her position. The door opened. Arya came out on the porch. She saw them and rushed down the steps. Mommy, Daddy, Mandy. They caught her and spun around all together. And the children looked out the windows and dreamed that someday a new mom and dad would come for them. Share in the comments what you think about this situation and the behavior of the characters. And thank you for listening to the story to the end. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel Life Cucumber Brick. All the best.